Well, by the way, we should thank Jamie Scotto for putting us together here at the Data Center Dynamics event. And it's interesting, this event, first time I've been here, but you walk the floor and it's a lot about data center racks and power and such. And what's really been interesting about attending Jamie's events over the past couple of years is you really get into the plumbing of the networks and the data centers and the colo centers and the meet me rooms. And even the last 3 or 4 years that I've been attending, things have changed dramatically. And so I think next year if we come back here together, I think you're going to see more of the network guys as part of this discussion. I hope that's what you see. But thank you, Jamie, for having us. While I'm in London this week, I've been visiting some of our customers, InterDigital. I went down to the Surrey 5G Innovation Center over to King's College and looked at some of the things they're doing. And the term that I heard more often than not was information-centric networks. That's you talk about the web-centric guys that are really driving a different architecture. So I'm going to put that into ICN capacity planning because that's really what the carriers are having to deal with, is how to deal with all this information and how it's going to challenge their network. So I'm going to just open it up to the group and you guys can take turns answering it. But how has capacity planning changed with this exponential growth of mobile data and video?
I'm not sure it even exists.
I was just going to say the same.
What's that? What capacity planning?
There is no capacity planning.
It's capacity reacting.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
Our job is always, okay, what's the biggest hole you have to patch, and then how do you patch it? So then it's best for the job.
Yep.
And if something's incumbent, you pray to God you can get some of it. If it's not, then you figure out how to build it. But it's highly reactive in most cases. I mean, even when we're doing spec builds for clients, to the point, the metaphor I brought up at the opening thing where we built this thing that took us 12 months, it was the state of the art, and then all of a sudden 12 months later it's a dinosaur. Well, now you've got to capacity react to that. Now it's driven by a latency component, but how did the world change that much in 12 months? I mean, you think about, evolution of technology, that's as diametric as it can possibly get. And that's one big network. All these other smaller metro networks are even that much more liquid. And I think I would spend probably better than half of my time listening to my salespeople or my engineers tell me what we got to do to optimize somewhere because someone's thought of something different that's faster, different, better, cheaper, what have you. And it's perpetual reaction. If you can never get out in front, then it's almost like you're the deer that is in the headlights because now you don't know how you even got there.
It could be awfully lonely out there.
I agree with absolutely all of that, and I would say, where does it end? Because everyone knows people, and I've been one who says 100 megabits will never need more than that, never need more than a gig, never need more than 10. Here I am at 1010s, 100's looking cheap, and it just goes on and on and on. But the internet has changed, and people don't realize the actual way data applications are run on the internet has changed, and they create more packets, exponentially more, and all the old rules of thumb have gone. And I think we're actually in trouble. I think it's possible to patch it now, but you're not going to patch the next one quite so easily. It's just getting harder and harder. All the stuff my company sells enables people to make better use of the fiber they've got, but in the end, they've used all their fiber. In the end, there are constraints that the infrastructure sets, and we're going to hit them really soon. It's going to be a surprise, and I'm for announcing a new concept, the silicon footprint. Like when we were running out of energy, at least in Europe, I was born in England, just spent the last 25 years in the States, so I've kind of got a foot in both camps. But here, a carbon footprint, here in London, a carbon footprint is a very important thing. Here in the States, less so. I got the biggest red truck you can imagine in the whole world. My carbon footprint is this big, man. It's a man's truck. But maybe a silicon footprint would be a measure. The amount of actual technology resources you use. If you're going to use a 4K smartphone, you should pay for it, or at least be able to buy credits for it or something. Because this time 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, people said, what's the point of a carbon footprint? We're not going to need that. But now we do. It's like everybody used to smoke, and now anybody smokes.
We're very undisciplined in the way in which we use data. I mean, I know with my digital camera, I'm generating tons and tons of data. I'm storing it somewhere. It's next to free for me.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't worry about it because it's there.
You're behaving smartly, behaving like everybody. Just,
but you always get an awful lot of unsolicited video being generated. You jump onto a web page and suddenly you've got a load of little videos scrolling at you. It's unsolicited, but it's there.
What pages are you going to?
Too much information.
Jeff, like you just said, on these points, they're all good points. I think a few things have to happen.
first thing is carriers have to recognize that the customer comes first, and they're still going to want what they need, and they're going to, but they have to also understand from the customer perspective that the customer has to be educated that this is like your water pipe. It's your lifeblood. One cyber attack against your enterprise can, cause serious economic harm. There is the whole education that has to go on. It's two-way. I think that organizations that are agile, that can rely on new technologies, that are not going to have the attitude that the client, well, this is all we can do for you. We have this legacy infrastructure here. That's what you're going to get. I don't think that cuts it anymore. We just can't, as you know, the guys that you're talking to when you were here, they're the future of forecasting where we're going to go. There's no stopping that. And so I think agile companies that are working with the end customer to make them understand how important it is are going to help us manage our way from this, because right now today, we've probably been saying this for 2 or 3 years, it's not a commoditized product anymore. It shouldn't be the cheapest thing. I can put in IP VPN, but heaven forbid if somebody downloads the software for a soccer game and I get some kind of virus attack or cyber attack because of that, that's a big issue. So we have to really start thinking about capacity and how important it is.
Well, come back to the core question about capacity planning. Everyone here serves the carriers in one form or fashion, and I would argue that the web-centric guys are the new carriers, because you look at the underlying communication software they're using. I mean, it's Erlang-based, WhatsApp and that sort of thing. These are communication software companies built as web-centric hyperscale companies. But what tools are your customers using to plan for their capacity needs, and then what role are you playing helping them try to figure that out? And maybe start here, Rob. What do you
so we basically our network is pretty agile. It's can be upgraded by software. You can go from 5 to 10 meg for an enterprise. And you can do that based on a maintenance window. 2 weeks from now, if you came to me and said I want 5 megs today and I want 10 megs tomorrow, I could say in 2 weeks that'll happen based on your change that you have to look after with the customer. So I think that it's really just the open dialogue, understanding your end clients' behavior, what they really want to do, what they're planning on doing, and they may not even know. As we just talked about, they may not know, but I think if you ask the right questions, it may inspire them to know. But there's a lot of, we talked about the web-centric guys. They're basically buying wholesale because they're so big, and they're big companies, and they're also sort of the tail wagging the dog, which is the end customer to them, consumers, lots of them. And small medium business. So it's a challenge. It's not going to go away, but I think it's up to us as providers of telecom data services to do more education, like a roundtable like this.
So let's jump down, if I could, and then we'll come back. But Greg, you guys are building, $250,000 subsea networks, and then you got your metro networks and your co-location centers, and you're serving your customers. You're trying to understand their needs, but what tools? I mean, how are they planning for growth? What tools are they using?
So we're in the same situation that we're very reactive to what our customers are asking us for. We're customer driven in what we're providing and how we're bolstering up our network. Each year we go through a budget cycle and we look at what paths we want to upgrade from 40 channel or 8 channel or build new fibre routes in. There's constant evolution of the network. There are, of course, the metrics that we want to start looking at. Things like, go back to, we are talking about this as being the age of the customer. The customer wants immediate satisfaction from the services they get. They want a really good quality of experience. And so things like latency become incredibly important. Things like You obviously don't want any packet loss or contention in the networks. So all of this stuff, you've got to provide the core network platform to ensure the full horizontal end-to-end delivery of the service has delivers that quality of experience.
Jay, Rob, or Roy?
I would say most of my customers don't know what their loads will be, even though their planning cycle is short. They still don't know. Often their loads are dependent on them picking up a customer further up the line, and so they don't know their customers' requirements, so they can't pass them on to me. I think the days are long gone. I'm a mathematician. 5 years ago, I could have done you a nice little exponential curve, a bit like the Cisco numbers you get that show that demand is creeping up with this beautiful continuous thing. And it is for the universe, but it's not for Luton. It's not for in any one place a continuous thing, it's discontinuous. You can't do a smooth forecast, it doesn't exist. On the other hand, I would say, you don't need to forecast for all the customers. Maybe you need to forecast in a stratified way. Your priority customers always need to get through. You have an SLA to work to. You need to forecast for that, and that might be easy, but demand as a whole is too lumpy nowadays, and nobody knows. I do know, if you double the client traffic into a data center, the traffic between that data center and the next rises exponentially. That is so counterintuitive. There's no little clever piece of software I can give you that you can look at every now and then. And, next week we will need 4.679 megabits a second. It's not going to work like that. So I think the thing you're looking for, really I think, like me, you're a prisoner of your experience. There must be a way of forecasting it. There isn't. There isn't.
Well, that's a great segue to Jason, the things you do. And, you tend to be very specific about the problem you're solving and for the customer. The high frequency trader might be different than the carrier.
My world's been blown apart because I thought Roy had that piece of software.
Yeah.
So a couple things. So tools, unfortunately or fortunately, one of the favorite tools that my customers use is their wallet.
Yeah, it's a service agreement.
It's kind of a service order form. But we try to find ways of making that dollar become at least useful and have return. And it's interesting because the way you just phrased the question, I think, is useful in that if you look at our latency practice versus our data practice, there is an ability to plan more in the latency practice than the data practice, because there is a deterministic nature to building low latency networks where right now I've got networks underway from Chicago to Seattle to connect to Tokyo via the Pacific Trans-Pacific cables. I've got networks under construction right now from London up to Stockholm that will give us the NASDAQ OMX and then the Moscow exchange. And when you look at that with everything else that we've got under our umbrella, it becomes a pretty big, bad, low latency network. The thing of it is, in that network, because of the deterministic thing, which you always have to look at as the guy that's clipping at your heels, trying to take 1 microsecond off your route, and all of a sudden, that which was worth $20,000 a month for one guy is now worth nothing because they're 1 microsecond behind the next guy. So you do have a really unusual ebb and tide, but there you can plan. If you look to our metro non-low latency business, and we've done some work with the group at 325 Hudson. In fact, you and I met up on the group there a couple of years ago when we were first doing a managed rooftop with them. We've done some work with Safety Data Centers and a few others. And data centers, whether it's the trading guys or whatnot, we view as kind of really the epicenter for how telecom is going to be anchored, because whether it's the cloud guys, the content guys, the carrier guys, they really, it's just a bunch of computers. You got to have some kind of a line drawing into each other. And that's where, whether it's a latency event or a bandwidth event or both events, you're going to run into some issue where you have to be able to think it through. Now, if Roy had the software tool, then we could all go home and be done.
I'm really sorry about that.
So I'm just going to keep blaming you there for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But as a practical matter, when we get into the low latency piece, but it's such a hyper-specific niche, because conversely, the latency guys don't care about bandwidth. They've learned how to take gigabit pipes and cram them into 10 meg. It's almost like, it's the bipolar opposite. I mean, it's the yin and the yang of what everything else that we're seeing in the industry, because they care about the velocity from A to Z. They figured out, okay, I can strip all this stuff off. Like Greg said, I'm taking all these pictures. We don't know what, web pages he's looking at. We don't want to know, but these guys are figuring out how to strip everything off. It's right down to it's the frame and the steering wheel and the gas pedal of the car and nothing else. They've dropped the stereo, the sound system, the power windows. They don't want any of that stuff. But our data center customers are this guy, right? I've got a bazillion Facebook things I need to post, and I wanna post them now, and I don't, the iOS can wait to do it when I'm sleeping, but I don't want to. So you have that, this really kind of behavioral component, which is humanistic. Not to say that my trading customers aren't human, but they've got a very specific, right down the middle focus in that space that does just change the entire, I'd say, framework for planning there. And you can plan that, but you're always planning the velocity, not the capacity. And one good example, the millimeter wave, if I was gonna go off and build the transatlantic thing that we did with a year ago with millimeter wave, yeah, I could have done a gigabit, but it would have cost so much money and taken, actually I'd still be building it while he was beating me. So, you have to look at those trade-offs as well in terms of how you plan and, again, right tool for the job, which I think is an essential component when you're looking at, how do you solve some of these problems.